The moment my mother-in-law said, "I'm gonna get you out of here," I knew my life was about to turn upside down. It wasn't a threat said in anger or during an argument. No, she said it calmly, with a small smile, like she was commenting on the weather. She looked me dead in the eye, placed her teacup gently on the kitchen counter, and said it like she was planning a grocery run. My husband, Travis, didn't even blink. He was scrolling on his phone, nodding along, probably thinking she was joking. But I knew better. Because from the second she moved into our house, she'd been playing the long game, and I just hadn't realized it until that exact moment. Let me take you back. I'm Kelly Ray. I'm 35, I work in HR for a tech startup, and I married Travis 4 years ago. We bought our first house 2 years into the marriage, a cozy 2-bedroom just outside Austin. Bright kitchen, little garden out back, enough space for friends to visit without it feeling empty. I picked every paint color, signed every paper at closing, and when the keys were finally in my hand, I remember whispering, "Ours." Only it didn't feel like ours for long. It started as a temporary arrangement. Travis's mom, Loretta, had a plumbing issue in her condo and needed a place to stay. I said yes without hesitation. What kind of daughter-in-law would I be otherwise? But the weeks turned into months. And Loretta, with her crocheted coasters and lemon-scented candles, slowly embedded herself into every corner of the house. Her coats took over the hallway hooks. Her voice was the first thing I heard every morning, humming off-key in the kitchen while she brewed her molasses-thick herbal tea. I told myself it was just an adjustment. But then she started correcting me. Folding towels differently. Rearranging the pantry. Leaving notes on the fridge about which food should be used first. "It's not criticism, sweetheart," she'd say with a smile. "Just little improvements." I told Travis it was getting to me. He rubbed his temples and sighed, "She's just trying to help. She's old school. You know how she is." Except I didn't know she was a mind reader. Because somehow, Loretta always knew when Travis and I had argued. And not just the big fights. Even the little ones. Once, we disagreed about the thermostat setting in whispers behind a closed door, and the next morning, I found a printout on the counter titled, "Ideal Household Temperatures for Couples." With a handwritten note, "Thought this might help, hugs and kisses, Loretta." I started watching her more closely after that. Once, I caught her standing just outside our bedroom with a tray of cookies during a tense conversation. "I was just about to knock," she said sweetly. But her eyes? They were too knowing. The weirdest part was, I didn't think Travis was oblivious. I think he was avoiding. Deflecting. Pretending. He wanted everything to stay smooth. But smooth for who? It got worse. She started planting little seeds with Travis. "Do you think Kelly's working too much? She looked tired last night." Or, "Poor thing, she forgets so much. Maybe she needs a break." And things started to go missing. My car keys. Password note cards. One day, I found a charity receipt I'd tucked away in a drawer, filed neatly in a binder I never use. Loretta claimed she was helping me organize, but I started to feel like a stranger in my own home. One morning, I walked into the kitchen and caught her mid-phone call. She didn't hear me at first. "I just don't know how he puts up with her," she said, laughing softly. "He deserves someone more suitable." Suitable. I made a noise to announce myself. She jumped, then smiled. "Oh, Kelly. Didn't hear you come in. I told Travis about it." He sighed. "You probably misheard. My mom wouldn't say something like that." I looked at him for a long time. Would she? Or would you just rather not deal with it? Later that week, we hosted dinner for a few friends. Loretta insisted on cooking most of it. During dessert, she beamed at everyone. "Isn't it nice to have a home-cooked meal for a change? Travis tells me he mostly eats frozen dinners otherwise." The table laughed. I smiled. But I could feel it. The hollow throb in my chest. The burn in my cheeks. The rage was quiet, but it was there. And when I looked at Travis, he just laughed along, eyes down at his plate. That was the moment something shifted in me. Because it wasn't just about being polite anymore. It was about survival. Then came the morning she said it. We were at breakfast, and she had that sing-song tone in her voice that always made me nervous. Travis and I were chatting last night. About how hard it must be for you. Balancing work and everything else. I sipped my coffee. And I think maybe it's time to consider other living arrangements. For you. I blinked. I live here. Exactly, she said, like she was breaking bad news with a hug. And it just doesn't seem to suit you. This house, this pace, this relationship. But don't worry. I'm gonna get you out of here. And Travis? He didn't even look up. He just kept scrolling his phone, like we were discussing weather patterns and not evicting his wife. That was the moment I knew. She wasn't just trying to insert herself into our life. She was trying to replace me. And he? He was letting her. But what neither of them knew was that this house. It wasn't his. It was mine. And I had the paperwork to prove it. I didn't say anything for the rest of that breakfast. I sat there, sipping my coffee slowly, nodding every now and then as Loretta prattled on about some article she read on elderflower tea preventing inflammation, or whatever trend she was pretending to follow that week. Travis stayed glued to his phone, his thumbs working like they were trying to erase himself from the table. I watched them both with this dull, detached awareness, like I'd slipped underwater without realizing it. Loretta's voice sounded tinny and far away, and Travis, he didn't even glance at me. It was like I was already gone, and neither of them noticed. That was the moment I stopped trying to be noticed. That evening, I didn't cook, didn't suggest dinner plans, didn't even ask if anyone was hungry. I went upstairs, pulled the bedroom door shut, and lay on top of the duvet, still in jeans and a t-shirt, just staring at the ceiling fan turning in its lazy rhythm. I didn't cry. I didn't fume. I didn't even reach for my phone. I just lay there letting the silence stretch and wrap around me like a thick wool blanket. It wasn't sadness or defeat. It was something quieter, stranger. Something that settled into my chest and started taking root. The next few days, I stopped fighting the current. Loretta wanted control of the grocery list? She could have it. She wanted to take over dinner, reorganize the pantry again, even reprogram the laundry cycles? Be my guest. I didn't argue when she suggested adding more of her favorites to the shared calendar, or when she made little comments about how much easier the house ran when I was less involved. I just nodded or smiled or said nothing at all. And with every inch I gave, she stretched herself further. She bloomed in my silence. Travis didn't seem to notice. Or maybe he noticed and didn't want to deal with it. He never said much beyond the occasional, "You okay?" Which I always answered with, "I'm fine." He never pressed. He never asked if Loretta was overstepping. He just nodded, returned to his scrolling, and treated our silence like peace. Loretta, of course, took full advantage. Within the week, she was hosting dinner nightly, heavy casseroles and roasted meats that she insisted were Travis's favorites from childhood. She joined him on his walks, even though she could barely keep pace. She started labeling things in the house, creating a system with sticky notes, like she was prepping a museum exhibit. One evening, I found she had labeled a drawer in the bathroom guest products, which included all of my skincare. I withdrew further. Cancelled brunch plans. Let texts pile up. Deleted my Instagram app and left my book club group chat unread. My absence wasn't loud or dramatic, it was subtle, quiet, intentional. I watched the space I used to occupy fill with Loretta's voice, Loretta's opinions, Loretta's possessions. And through all of it, Travis stood comfortably between us, as if silence was his favorite room to sit in. But beneath that silence, something else had started to stir. Something with sharper edges. 2 days after that breakfast, I ran into Diane, the notary we had used 2 years back, while waiting in line at the pharmacy. She was wearing the same crisp blazer and carrying that leather planner I remembered. Her tired but sharp eyes lit up when she saw me. "Kelly? Hey. Long time." I gave her a half smile. "It's been a minute." She tilted her head. "Still holding down the castle?" I paused at that. The question felt heavier than she realized. "Trying to," I said. Then I lowered my voice a notch. "Do you still have your records? From when you notarized the deed on the house?" She blinked, then her expression tightened with interest. "The one Travis signed over to you?" "Absolutely." "Why?" I took her card, smiling faintly. "Might need to see them again." She didn't press. Just handed it over with a knowing nod. "Whenever you're ready." As I walked home, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt grounded. Like I'd put my palm on a railing just before a steep fall and realized the staircase wasn't nearly as high as I thought. That week, Loretta hosted a tea party for her church friends. I stood at the upstairs window, watching her fuss over lace napkins and a tray of lemon scones she claimed were a family recipe but I knew came from the bakery on Main. She had dragged out the mismatched china I'd boxed away months ago and set everything on the patio table with theatrical flair. I wasn't invited. Not that I would have attended. But I overheard them anyway. As I passed the back door to grab a sweater, I heard Loretta's voice drifting in like sweet syrup. "She's doing her best, bless her heart. But she's so distracted lately, poor thing. I don't think she really thrives in this kind of domestic setting." A chorus of sympathetic clucks followed. Then another voice added, "Some women aren't made for marriage. They're better on their own. Independent, you know." They laughed. I stood still, hand on the door, staring at the doorknob like it had insulted me personally. I could have walked out, could have corrected her, could have torn the mask clean off. But I didn't. I turned around and walked back upstairs. I took a long, hot shower, letting the water hit my neck like rain against stone. The next day, Travis offhandedly told me Loretta had started a group chat titled Household Updates. When I opened it, I saw images of new bath towels, an article about grocery organization, and a link to a home security system she apparently wanted us to install. I was listed second. Travis first. Her last. I muted it immediately, then deleted the notifications. The silence after that felt earned. That Saturday, I left early and drove out to the lake. I didn't leave a note. I didn't check my phone. I sat on a bench by the water with a notebook and wrote down every moment I could remember since she moved in that made me feel small. Not just what she did. What Travis didn't. Times he looked the other way. Times he laughed at her barbs. Times he leaned back instead of stepping in. I wrote them all, not to wallow but to see it on paper, like evidence. On the way home, I stopped at a thrift store and bought myself a pair of vintage pearl earrings. Simple. Bright. Mine. That night, I wore them to dinner. Loretta raised an eyebrow the second she saw them. "New earrings?" she asked, her tone like she was testing the temperature of something. I nodded. "Picked them up this afternoon." "They're very independent," she said. I held her gaze. That's what I liked about them. After dinner, Travis offered to do the dishes. Loretta and I sat in the living room, the low hum of the sink behind us. She watched me for a long time, trying to read my stillness. "You've been very quiet lately," she said, almost like an accusation. I didn't break eye contact. "Some people take silence as surrender," I said calmly. "But sometimes, it's preparation." She blinked. "Is that so?" I smiled. "People think I've moved on. They're not entirely wrong." She didn't respond. I stood, walked to the kitchen, kissed Travis on the cheek, and told him I was going to bed. He didn't ask where I'd been. He didn't ask anything at all. As I climbed the stairs, I could feel Loretta's eyes on me. Watching. Calculating. Trying to figure out what I knew. Let her. Because whatever version of me they thought they were dealing with, she was gone. And the woman taking her place was very much awake. It started with a receipt. A simple white slip of paper, curled at the edges and wedged between the couch cushions where Loretta had been perched the night before, flipping through some glossy magazine about aging gracefully. I wouldn't have looked twice at it if I hadn't been vacuuming the living room that morning and spotted the logo of a local estate consultant's office printed in the corner. At first, I assumed it was some flyer or ad, until I flipped it over and saw the appointment confirmation, meeting with client, Loretta Hayes. Discussion, preliminary estate planning, contingent cohabitation clauses. My stomach gave a lurch that surprised even me, because by then I thought I was past being shocked. But there it was. In print. Loretta wasn't just settling in. She was anchoring herself here, legally, structurally, permanently. I didn't say anything to Travis that day. I tucked the receipt into a notebook in the top drawer of my desk and went about my day like nothing had changed. But inside, something sharp clicked into place. It was no longer just about turf wars or controlling calendars. This woman was rewriting her future and penciling me out of it. What stunned me more than anything was how confident she was in doing it, as if it were a formality, a simple rearrangement of names on paper. And Travis, well, it was clearer than ever that he wasn't just passive, he was pliable. Not cruel, not stupid. Just weak. Weak in that quietly dangerous way people are when they'd rather float than take a side. From that moment, I began collecting things. Quietly. Meticulously. Not in the way Loretta collected teacups or inspirational fridge magnets, but in the way someone collects proof. I started keeping a file, a literal manila folder I labeled with the most boring name I could think of, Annual Budget Review. Inside, I slid copies of every calendar change Loretta made without asking, screenshots of every text she sent to Travis without including me, notes on every guest she invited without my consent, photos of labeled drawers and pantry charts. It wasn't petty. It was evidence. And more importantly, it gave me something to hold on to while the walls of my home felt like they were quietly shifting around me. A week after finding that receipt, I overheard a phone call Loretta had while she thought I was upstairs. I had just stepped inside from watering the backyard succulents, and the back door clicked shut softer than usual. Her voice was low, syrupy. "No, he's not going anywhere," she said with a chuckle. "I've made sure of that. Once we get the paperwork going and Travis understands how much simpler things would be without all this back and forth, I think she'll finally see she doesn't belong here." The silence on the other end must have been a question, because she answered, "Oh, I'm not saying she's a bad person. But she doesn't fit. You know? It's not her fault. She's just miscast." I didn't flinch. I didn't make a sound. I just stepped away from the door, walked to the hall closet, and added miscast to the list in my folder. I stood there for a long time afterward, letting the word echo in my head. Miscast. Like I was a background actor who accidentally wandered into the wrong scene. Over the next few weeks, I began re-engaging with people in my life, not all at once, not enough to draw Loretta's attention, but gradually. I rejoined my workbook club and reached out to a few friends I drifted from. I started scheduling lunch breaks outside of the office, usually solo, but sometimes with Diane, who was more than happy to grab coffee and chat. She never asked too many questions, but she always left every meeting with a look that said she knew more than she let on. And one day, when I asked her about the process of documenting household interference from a non-owner resident, she slid a printed packet across the table and said, "This should help. Just in case." At home, Loretta grew bolder. She started referring to the house as our space when talking to Travis. I even heard her tell a friend on speakerphone that she was handling the domestic operations, like she was the appointed steward of the entire household. What made my jaw tighten, though, was when she told Travis, gently, almost as if making a helpful suggestion, that the guest room could be a great meditation space for her morning routines. I smiled when she said it. That might be a little cramped, I replied, keeping my tone even. Oh, well, she said, tilting her head like a curious bird. I just thought it might help all of us maintain more harmony. I held her gaze. Harmony always sounds better on paper than it feels in real life. The air between us was a held breath. She could sense it, the shift. I wasn't defensive anymore. I wasn't rattled. I was composed in that quiet way that makes people uncomfortable because it means something is coming, and they can't tell what it is. That night, I sat with an old notebook and started writing. Not a plan, not a timeline. Just truths. My truths. I wrote about how this marriage felt when it started. I wrote about the moment I realized Travis wouldn't protect me. And then I wrote something I hadn't said out loud to myself yet: I didn't want him back. Not really. I didn't want the version of him that had let this happen. What I wanted now was clarity. And a clean exit on my terms. A few days later, I saw Loretta had left a binder open on the counter, too conveniently open to be an accident. It was titled Household Continuity Plan. Inside were charts, protocols, color-coded labels, and a flowchart ending in long-term occupant, Travis Hayes. Not one mention of me. I wasn't part of the disaster prep. I wasn't part of the vision. I snapped a photo of every page and added it to the folder. Then I placed the binder neatly in the drawer under the microwave, just like she wanted me to. Let her believe I hadn't even noticed. The moment that sealed it, though, the one that made me ache and burn at the same time, came the night of the dinner. Travis and I had been invited out by one of his old friends. I'd picked out a dress, even straightened my hair for the first time in months. I came downstairs and saw him already standing by the door, coat on, keys in hand. But when he looked at me, something in his face changed. Like he wasn't expecting me to come. Actually, he said slowly, Sarah mentioned bringing her sister. Loretta thought it might be smoother if we made it a friends thing. Just for tonight. I stared at him. You're asking me to stay home? From a dinner I was invited to. With your friend. He winced. Just for tonight. We'll do something this weekend, I swear. And then came Loretta, like always, soft-voiced and hovering with a wine glass. It's just a casual thing, dear. Better not to overthink it. You've been so tired lately. I turned and walked back upstairs without another word. I sat on the edge of the bed for an hour, heels still on, dress pristine. I didn't cry. I just sat, letting the weight of the moment settle into my spine. And when I stood, I pulled the folder from my desk and added one line, erased by convenience. The next morning, Loretta hummed as she made breakfast. The sound was chipper, grating. She plated Travis's omelet and touched his shoulder like a spouse. He thanked her, unaware. Or maybe unwilling to confront what was unfolding in front of him. I poured my coffee and sat. When Loretta turned to me with a smile too wide to be innocent, I braced. You know, dear, sometimes the hardest part is knowing when to move on. But when you do, everything just falls into place. I looked at her, calm and clear. You're absolutely right. She blinked, like the words didn't land the way she expected. I set down my mug gently. Enjoy it while it lasts. Then I stood, folder tucked under my arm, and walked out. The plan was already in motion. She just didn't know she'd walked right into it. Loretta toasted her new lavender curtains like they were a milestone worth celebrating. She had ordered them without asking, chosen the most hideous pastel shade she could find, and had them installed while I was out for my morning walk. Just freshening things up, she told Travis, who smiled like she'd gifted him oxygen. That same afternoon, she baked a strawberry pie, set the table with the fine china, and even lit a candle, all under the pretense of family time. She was giddy, glowing, living like the queen of a castle she thought she ruled. Her laughter floated through the halls with a confidence that, at any other point in my life, would have made my blood boil. But now, it just confirmed what I already knew: she believed she had won. I let her think that. The next morning, I called Diane. "Everything's ready," I told her, gripping the steering wheel tighter than necessary as I sat parked in a quiet lot near the courthouse. "You have the documents?" "All signed, notarized, timestamped," she confirmed. "And the witness?" "Waiting at home," I said, glancing at the envelope in my lap. "She won't see it coming." When I pulled back into the driveway, Loretta's car was gone. I knew exactly where she'd gone, the tea shop she loved to parade through like she was royalty. That gave me just enough time. I stepped into the house, heart steady, and called Travis into the living room. He emerged from the office, phone in hand, wearing that same puzzled expression he always wore when I initiated anything lately. "I need 5 minutes," I said. "Sit." He dropped onto the couch, more curious than cautious, and waited. I walked over to the coffee table and laid down the manila folder. Then I slid the contents out, printed receipts, screenshots, photos, and notes, spreading them slowly like a dealer in a high-stakes game. "What is this?" he asked. "This is everything your mother has done since she moved in. Everything you've chosen not to see." His eyes flicked over the papers. "What's the point of this?" "The point," I said, keeping my voice even, "is that I need you to understand exactly why this is ending." "Ending?" he echoed, finally sitting upright. I nodded. "You let her take over everything. Our home. Our routines. Our marriage. And when she began writing me out of our life, you didn't stop her. You let her draw a version of our future where I didn't exist, and you didn't say a word." He opened his mouth, but I raised a hand. "I'm not here for a fight. I'm here to deliver a reality check." I handed him the second envelope, a copy of the deed with the notarization highlighted in yellow. "You remember when we bought this place? You said, 'Let's put it in your name.' You earned that bonus. It's yours." So I did. And it still is. My name. My property. His eyes locked on the line that confirmed it. The color drained from his face. He blinked at it for a long while before finally saying, "I didn't know it would come to this." "It didn't have to," I said quietly. "All you ever had to do was stand up. Even once." He shook his head, almost to himself. "She just wanted to help. I didn't think." "You didn't think at all, Travis," I said. "And that's the part that broke me. Not her schemes, your silence." Later that afternoon, I waited in the kitchen. The front door opened right on cue, Loretta's chirpy voice echoing before she even crossed the threshold. "Kelly," she called, tone sugary and sharp. "I picked up those herbal sachets you mentioned. Thought we could tuck them into the linen closet." I met her in the hallway, calm, composed, holding a third envelope. "Oh, perfect timing," I said. "I have something for you too." She cocked her head, suspicious but curious. "What is it?" I handed her the envelope. "A certified notice. Legally informing you that as a non-owner resident, you are required to vacate the property within 10 business days. I've also enclosed the deed to the house, which, in case you've forgotten, is entirely in my name." Her smile faltered, replaced by something tighter, meaner. "You've got to be kidding me." "You heard me." She tore the envelope open, I scanning the paper so fast she nearly ripped it. Then she looked back at me, face flushed with disbelief. "You can't do this," she hissed. "Travis would never allow it." "He doesn't have to," I said, voice even. "This isn't his house. It's mine. He saw the documents this morning. He knows it's over." "Over?" she repeated. You think pushing me out will fix what's broken between you two? He'll come to his senses. He always does. No, I said, stepping forward. He'll come to understand. Maybe slowly, maybe too late. But what matters is this: you don't live here anymore. You never did. You just squatted in my space long enough to forget you were a guest. She straightened her shoulders, puffing herself up. This is pathetic. A desperate little power move. You really think this makes you better than me? No, I said. This doesn't make me better. It makes me whole again. She laughed, sharp and bitter. I always knew you were temporary. You were never one of us. You don't know how to be a wife. I know how to be a woman who doesn't let herself be erased, I replied. Silence stretched between us, thick and bitter. I softened, just slightly. I've arranged for a moving service to come next week. And I've already covered the deposit at that senior community you bragged about last year, the one with the garden club you kept name-dropping. You'll have a fresh start. Somewhere else. She blinked. So this is charity now? It's closure, I said. Clean and legal. You don't have to thank me. She narrowed her eyes. You're going to regret this. You're going to end up alone. No, I said as I stepped aside to let her pass. I've been alone in this house for a long time. This is the beginning of peace. The next day, she started packing. Travis was a ghost in his own home. He lingered, watched the boxes pile up, made 1 or 2 weak suggestions about how we could all talk this out, but he never made a stand. And that silence spoke volumes. I didn't scream. I didn't ask him to choose. I'd already chosen myself. The morning Loretta left, she stood in the doorway for a long moment, I sweeping the living room like she was taking inventory of all she hadn't been able to steal. She glanced at me, eyes cold, no final words. But I saw the crack in her composure. The defeat. The fear of becoming irrelevant. She walked down the driveway like a queen stripped of her crown, climbed into the passenger seat of the moving van, and didn't look back. I stood there for a long time after it pulled away. Then I went inside, opened the windows, and pulled down the lavender curtains myself. I didn't just throw them out, I folded them, bagged them, and left them at the donation center that afternoon. Someone else might want pastel lies. I was done with them. That night, I sat alone at the kitchen table, the quiet humming around me like a hymn. I lit a candle, one I actually liked, and poured myself a glass of wine. I wasn't gloating. I wasn't grieving. I was free. They thought they erased me. All they did was give me a clean page, and I wrote the ending myself.